Hey everybody, welcome back to Tavern Talks 2.0. I am joined by my good friend Alex today. How are you doing, Alex?
Hello.
Okay, that was a question, but that's cool. Anyway, so Alex, I know that you have been a nerd for a long time, specifically in the realms of D&D, other tabletop games, and Magic, but just an overall nerd. Can you tell me a little bit, kind of give our audience a little bit of a background on yourself?
All right. So I grew up an only child, so kind of the easiest thing for my parents to do at the time was kind of just throw me in front of a TV, but TV shows were kind of boring. So my mom was actually, as a kid, she was really, really into video games. And she started way back, like Power Glove era. So she was actually, if I remember correctly, she was in one of the Nintendo Championships or something like that for Donkey Kong, or not for Donkey Kong, for the original like Mario game, where you have Kong kind of throwing the barrels and stuff like that. So that was kind of neat. And then my uncle also played a lot of video games. So, they just thought, okay, well, we like video games. He's a kid. Let's throw him in front of video games. So I grew up primarily on that. One of my first games was actually, I think it was Pokemon Yellow, I believe. And I was 3, I want to say, when I started playing that. And then I remember one of my most vivid memories was actually before the original Halo game came out on the Xbox. My uncle actually used to get, I believe it was Next Gen magazine or something like that. And they used to ship out demo discs as part of the magazine. So you would get it out of the mail or whatever. You open it up, there's a disc in there. And I had a demo disc that had like Splinter Cell, it had like Perfect Dark, it had Halo 1, stuff like that. I used to play a lot of those demo discs, like a lot. So like by the time that my uncle actually got the actual copy for Halo 1, we were actually at a midnight release, and that was awesome. I loved it.
Very cool. So that's really your introduction, I guess. And, of course, we love our video games on this channel. A little bit in the last episode, we were talking about, some of the classic games, more just like how stuff has evolved and advanced over time. Specifically, I think I brought up a 007 game that I remember looking really good on the Xbox. And then suddenly just like, well, I guess not suddenly, but years later, I come back to the game and I turned it on thinking, oh man, this game looked so good, and it just didn't. And you know what?
Some games definitely hold up, some don't.
Exactly. So you are one of the few people I've known who is the eternal DM when it comes to D&D. I'm curious to get your background on that. When did you first start playing D&D?
So my first D&D experience was kind of terrible, actually. This was, I want to say, this is my first time actually trying D&D. Like, I was sitting down, it was back in the, Skype days. It was me, a couple of my friends, whatever. And one of my buddies was like, hey, we're going to play D&D. You want to play? I'm like, I've never even touched D&D before, right? Like, I've seen Lord of the Rings. I played a lot of fantasy games, stuff like that, but I've never actually sat down and touched D&D.
Right.
And we sat there on Skype. If this tells you anything, there were 9 of us. And then, it took me 35 minutes. It took 35 minutes for me to get to my turn, because the second that the session started, we were fighting goblins and like rats.
Oh my gosh.
So that was my first thing. I talked for maybe a total of like 2 minutes just to say what my turn was going to be while they're trying to teach me how to play D&D. And yeah, that was it. And I told myself, I am never doing this again. And then a couple other buddies that were also in this session decided to do their own thing, and this was actually for a completely different campaign called Scion. So Scion, unlike D&D, where it's like a fantasy setting, Scion is it was made by White Wolf Games, and they do like World of Darkness and all that other stuff, I believe. But it was like D10 system, stuff like that, and you have it's a lot more like mythology inspired. So essentially, you are a scion, so like demigods and stuff like that. But it's a system where you kind of build your own character. There's no classes or races necessarily.
Right.
But I found that way more interesting. It was a lot more. It was a lot easier of a concept to grasp, at least at the time, because I think I was only like 16 or something like that. I was smart for my age, but I wasn't like D&D smart. Like D&D requires a whole different level of understanding how math works, and I hated math. So we were using Roll20, and thankfully Roll20 does most of the math for you, and so that was kind of neat. So we did that, and we did that for a couple of years. That was really, really fun. And then I started playing Magic when I was about 19, like 18 or 19, and the store that I went to, everyone also played Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm like, okay, I'll give this another try. This time, way better. Had the most amazing DM. Really sat me down. Really taught me how to play the game. He was awesome. I believe he worked for Disney, actually.
Oh wow!
But yeah, no, dude was fantastic. He was really, really like really invested in his players and making sure that we all had a good time. And somehow he was able to manage like 7 or 8 players and still give everyone like the absolute time that they deserved, and then also made it fun, right? Like he had this, it was so bizarre. I've never met a DM like him, but this dude is amazing. His name's Tom, but the dude was awesome. Tom, if you're still out there and you're just still doing your DMing thing, hit me up. I miss you. I love you. You made D&D amazing for me. But yeah, so ever since then, you know, I'm like, okay, I can DM, and I did it. And I actually kind of liked it. And the people that I ended up playing with really liked me as a DM, stuff like that. And ever since then, I have been a player one time. So I have very little experience playing as a player. The only couple times where I've kind of like taken some like stock basic builds and made them somehow busted. Don't know how. I guess I just know how to read. But you know, as a DM though, most of my thing is about, in the same fashion, the way that Tom does, is just making sure my players are having fun. You know, there's a lot of DMs out there that I've noticed that are really into making sure they have like the most immersive campaign setting and making sure that everything's great, and they build this world to be this so amazing and so well thought out and stuff like that. And then they have this attitude of like their players are playing the game wrong, or like their players are living in the world wrong. And I sit there and I think about it. I'm like, dude, you made a sandbox. If they're playing with a sand, that should be enough, you know?
Right.
You know, stuff like that. So I don't know. Some DMs are kind of weird about that. I can understand it, especially if you're sitting there world crafting for like days on end, and then your players like get completely distracted by the near shiny thing and could just completely derail this 5x story that you had. And it's like, okay, that sucks, but you got to roll with the punches, man.
I hear you. And tell you what, we're going to get into that in just a little while, because that's actually going to be one of our segments in this episode. But let's go ahead and walk through into our first segment now that our audience has gotten a chance to get to know you a little bit. Our first segment is underrated video games. Now, this can be a specific game that you have in mind, or an entire genre of games. Because I know that, you know, depending on the person, your tastes might be a little bit different than the person next to you, but inevitably you're going to end up finding something that a lot of people just have no idea. You know, like I feel like everybody has that one game, whether it's a like a guilty pleasure game or even something they grew up with that really doesn't stand up, but for some reason they absolutely love it. So I'll give you a moment, Alex, unless you have one prepped that you are ready to like fire off from the hip.
I've got like 6.
Okay, go for it. I'd love to hear them.
All right. So for underrated video games, the way that I kind of view something being like rated is like how much hype is there behind like how popular the game is or how well liked it is, whether or not it's got a cult following and whether or not that cult following likes it the way that they should, stuff like that.
Right.
For me, for a lot of people out there that think about it, like grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, stuff like that, they're probably going to agree with a lot of these. But for, most people, I don't think they're either have ever even heard of these games or are kind of familiar with the idea that these exist, but didn't grow up with that same relationship with them, right? But for me, hands down, first one on the list, Skies of Arcadia for the Sega Dreamcast. 100% has one of the greatest stories and settings I've ever had in any game, period. It is such a good game.
Wow, okay. So, I haven't personally heard of that one. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Okay, so picture this, right? Skies, pirates. The entire game is about air pirates, right? And when I say when I'm talking about like airships and stuff like that, I'm not talking like blimps and all that other stuff. I'm talking about think pirate ships, but in the middle of the sky.
I see. Yeah, so Spelljammer, basically.
Yeah. So in this world, there's not really a ground, right? It's just a bunch of floating islands in the sky and stuff like that. And each country or each area, each region in the sky, is actually very culturally different, right? And the thing is, in this world, the way that it kind of works is that there's actually, I believe it's 6 moons, right? And each moon is actually a different color, and each color corresponds to a different element because, of course, it's a Japanese game. Right. It's actually made by Sonic Team.
Okay, that makes sense. Something pretty whimsical like that.
I think it's Sonic. I'm pretty sure it's Sonic Team. It was either Sonic Team or Overworks, one of the two. Again, this was 99, 2000, so old game.
Right.
So, but what's really cool is that it plays like a traditional JRPG, but visually, it really, really holds up. If you're into emulation and stuff like that, there's actually a 4K texture pack that really makes the textures pop, and it's actually really, really nice. But the story holds up today. The visuals hold up today. If you're in a position where you really want to get your friends into a JRPG, but you don't know where to start, and Final Fantasy is just kind of too stereotypical of a place to start, Skies of Arcadia is definitely a good place to start.
Interesting. I'll definitely have to check that out. Unfortunately, I don't have the Sega Dreamcast. Although, recently I heard
you made it on the GameCube.
Okay, so I do have a functional GameCube. I don't know how,
If you have a GameCube, if you have a Wii, or if you have at least a decent computer, you can 100% emulate it if you want to. But it's fantastic. Awesome.
Interesting. It's funny, a little off topic here, but I heard recently that there was an indie developer who's working on I guess technically it's a standalone game, but it's more like a sandbox platform to allow old school classic games on systems that they don't sell anymore or do any more maintenance for, so that these games can be preserved into the future. And up until recently, there's been a lot of backlash from these companies saying, no, you can't sell our game, that's our game. And it's well, what are you doing with it? You haven't sold this game in 25 years. You're not making any money on this, and you never will again. So I guess shame on us for loving the game you released 2 decades ago that you refuse to allow us to transport into future technology.
Yeah, so something that I think is pretty safe when it comes to Skies of Arcadia specifically, it's a Sega game. And the Sega, last time I checked, Sega doesn't make consoles anymore.
Exactly. I think they're too focused on making anime figures and the like.
hey, it's decent quality, right? Let's get
you know what, Sega, I love you. Great. I love you. If you want to sponsor this video, you got my email down below. Just reach out to us. I'll take it back.
Hey, I'm a huge Phantasy Star fan, so if Sega starts sponsoring you, I'm here. I'm here 24/7. I got you.
It's not an underrated game. I personally did not own any Sega consoles, but I remember that I had a friend who did, and I used to go over to his house and he played, I can't remember if it was, It was one of the Sonic games. I think it was like.
What console was it for?
I want to say it was the Dreamcast.
Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2.
Okay, maybe. I'll be honest. It's been like almost 20 years since I went over there and played these games, and I remember going over to his place. It's the one where you can play as Biggs the cat. I remember that one.
That's Sonic Adventure 1.
Okay.
There were only 3, I'm pretty sure there were only 3 Sonic games for the Sega Dreamcast. Chances are it was either Sonic Adventure 1 or Sonic Adventure 2. So that's a pretty safe assertion to make.
Yeah, and I remember going over there and just being like, this is really, really interesting. And of course, that was the big competitor back in the day. I mean, technically it was the third No, it was the big competitor before, PlayStation really hit the market and took off. And I mean, I guess PlayStation was out there already, but they were still kind of clinging onto the whole Nintendo versus Sega thing that was going on. To compete with the N64.
Yeah, and it was the PS1 or the PS2, I believe, that absolutely just wrecked the Dreamcast.
It destroyed them. The only thing that I think brought Nintendo back to the forefront, I mean, the DS was really cool, and I gotta say, as far as, okay, I will say underrated systems, I guess it's not really a genre. The Nintendo DS was a really, I think, underrated system. I don't
think I can agree with that.
Because let me hear me out now, right?
All right.
Not only could it play its own games, and I'm talking not the 3DS, but the original DS.
I remember.
It did better performance than any other handheld system of the time. It could play DS games and it could play Game Boy games, any Game Boy game, meaning it was 3 generations of consoles crammed into one, and it lasted for years. I mean, I ended up trading mine out for the 3DS, like the dummy I was when I was like 12. But at the same token, I was thinking, oh, cool, new technology and all that. I should have kept the original. It was so much better than the 3DS. The 3DS was so gimmicky.
Yeah, here's where I guess we're gonna differ here. So like, although I agree with you, yes, the DS was fantastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to say it's underrated, everyone had a DS.
Not everybody, because the thing is, there was the wars between the DS and the PS Vita.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
As far as what it was, because like, I feel like a lot of people looked at the DS as sort of a cliff note. Like they looked at it as like, okay, the Game Boy, everyone loved the Game Boy. And of course the Game Boy was the one that really made like handheld game systems a thing, and the cartridge really, brought back to life with that. But then there was the Game Boy Advanced, there was the Game Boy, what was it, the Advanced
SP.
That was it. Yeah,
I have owned, I'm pretty sure, like every game console. The thing is, the DS, I'm pretty sure, has sold like 150 million copies compared to like the PSP at like 70 or something like that.
Exactly. Well, and they dominated the market, but at the same token, the fact that then there was the 3DS and then the flop known as the Wii U, and now they have the Switch. Like, I feel like to some extent it's just sort of a cliff note in, that, time frame. But I feel like the DS was sort of the gold standard. If you had one, it was perfect. Like, they didn't need to make it something it wasn't. Like, it could play all the cartridge games that you played for the original Game Boy and whatnot, and it still held, like, even today, if you buy a DS, you can still play all those games. It's not like they're blocked behind some paywall, and it's not like the system is falling apart or deteriorating to the point that like it's unplayable. You might find that your DS doesn't have a stylus anymore, but aside from that, like the system, in my humble opinion, was as good as it could be for the time.
What's wild is like every time that I move, I still find a DS stylus with no DS. I'm like, okay, hold on. Where were these when I had my DS? Where are these coming from?
And you remember they actually used to sell like the custom styluses that had like the little heads and stuff on them.
Yeah.
I think I had like a Jack Sparrow one, or one that had like a little skull or something on it. And my sister had like a Hello Kitty one. So like, yeah, I mean, it was a really unique time. And I feel like as cool as the Wii was, the DS really defined that generation of handheld gaming, right? And I guess Nintendo gaming as a whole, even more than the 3DS did.
You know what's what I think is a really good way to track success when it comes to consoles?
What's that?
All right, now hear me out. Hot take, right? If it had a Kingdom Hearts game on it, it was successful.
Okay, you say that, but that was also the PlayStation, because it was a PlayStation exclusive.
It wasn't.
Wasn't it?
Nope.
Oh, I got to fact check you here.
Yep. Dream Drop Distance, right, which is Kingdom Hearts 3D, came out on the 3DS. 3DS was massively popular, right? Then you had on the Game Boy Advance, you had Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, right, which originally was a Game Boy Advance game. I had that too. Then you had what was it? I think it was 358 over 2 days.
Okay, so I will throw a small correction in there. The original releases for Kingdom Hearts,
it was just on the PS2.
Was on the PS2 and the PS3. Eventually, and this is recent, 2020 was the first time that it went to a different console.
No, not at all.
That's what I'm reading here.
358 over 2 days came out 2009.
Let's see.
You're probably looking at the games with Sora in it, because that's just Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and Dream Drop Distance. But Dream Drop Distance was on the 3DS. Yeah.
I'm gonna end up clipping this. Let's see.
Look up 358 over 2 days. It came out on the Nintendo DS in 2009. Yeah, Kingdom Hearts, the only Kingdom Hearts games that were exclusive to the PlayStation were Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. The only ones.
Oh, so you're saying there were other like spin-off Kingdom Hearts that were available on other consoles? They're
part of the main story, though. They are part of the main story.
Interesting.
Kingdom Hearts doesn't go Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, 3. Kingdom Hearts goes Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts 2. Then you have 358 over 2 days. You have Dream Drop Distance, which is technically Kingdom Hearts 3. Then you have Kingdom Hearts 3. There's like 15 Kingdom Hearts games.
That's really interesting. So for the record, I did not officially grow up with Kingdom Hearts. I had a friend who had them. I had the PlayStation, but it was one of those games that like everybody had. So it's like, instead of, my family not wanting to pay the money for it, I would just be like, hey, can I borrow this? And they'd be like, I guess. And then I'd occasionally.
Hearts is wild, dude. Like the rabbit hole for Kingdom Hearts is insane.
It was a really interesting game. Definitely not underrated. I think it was properly rated.
No, not at all. No, a lot of people, especially diehard Kingdom Hearts fans, this is something I like. Me in fandoms. I hate fandoms, right? But like the Kingdom Hearts fandom is so like toxic sometimes, because it's like, no, Kingdom Hearts is underrated. And it's like, no, it is the perfect amount of rated. I get it. Goofy's in it. That's cool. Technically, fun fact, right? I have to say this as a Kingdom Hearts fan and a Final Fantasy fan, right? Technically speaking, one of the most powerful mages in all of Square Enix's entire like repertoire of games is Donald Duck. Yeah, there is a almost apocalyptic world-ending spell within like Final Fantasy and all that other stuff called Zeta Flare, right? Mm-hmm. Donald Duck can just cast it, right? Gosh. Like in Final Fantasy 14, the main world-ending event is when there's this giant dragon summoning Bahamut, who is like the most powerful, or one of the most powerful entities that exist in Final Fantasy 14's world, right? Mm-hmm. And it is also, at least in that version, is one of the most powerful things that exist in Final Fantasy period, right? When it wakes up, it just destroys everything. It just resets the world. Like wow. just by it waking up, right? And in Final Fantasy 14, it has Zeta Flare. And the whole thing is that literally just that version of the universe, that dimension is gone, right? Donald Duck can just cast it, but just by the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, he can just cast it.
Oh, gosh.
I'm like, what? Wait a minute, what? Like, it's wild, dude. Kingdom Hearts is crazy.
So, I think that's actually an interesting segue. I'm going to skip over, at least we'll come back to it, but briefly, while we're talking on this topic, unique D&D character builds that are broken or otherwise. And before you go into it, I want to bring this up that I believe it was back in the 80s, and I don't have a specific year. I just saw a video about this, so again, take it with a grain of salt what I'm saying here. There was the company that owned D&D at the time, because I don't think it was Wizards at that point, ended up releasing the official character sheets for multiple fictional characters, such as Bugs Bunny. I think they had like the Tasmanian Devil, Popeye. I think Popeye was he was a 7th level fighter, and when he consumed spinach, he became like an 18th level fighter or something. Ridiculous like that. It is the funniest thing. I'll put them up here on the screen. For those of you watching visually, you'll get to see some of these if I'm able to find them. But it was just the funniest thing when I heard that, recognizing that the thing that, a lot of people spend time doing in D&D, making their quote-unquote favorite character to then play as, was something that they actively pursued back in the 80s, and Lord knows if anybody ever used them, because they sounded immensely broken.
Oh yeah, from what I remember, like TSR, whenever they were making 2nd edition, I think, I remember I was reading somewhere, I don't remember where though, they were kind of explaining why the whole reason why they went to a 2nd edition was because the 1st edition was so super easily exploitable as a system. And then they made 2nd edition, which AD&D 2nd edition was somehow more exploitable than just regular D&D. It was insane. So every now and then, whenever I'll meet another DM or something like that, like old heads, I'm talking about like D&D players who are well into their 50s and stuff like that. They'll talk about, oh well, I had this character and this character could do this, and they're trying to explain to me why their basic spell, or something that would be a basic spell in 5th edition, for example, is so powerful at the time. And I don't get it until I look at the way that damage worked and the way that characters in general worked. And I'm like, you're telling me you could just one-shot something because you just breathed it into existence? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, man, why can't I do that? All my magic items are worthless past 3rd level. What is happening?
Oh gosh, yeah. Talk about and we'll come back to this in a minute, but when you were playing as Modius.
Oh yeah.
I brought that up in the first episode. If you haven't seen that, go watch it. We were talking a little bit about this guy here. Alex is the one that was playing as Modius, aka Shard, the magic sentient rock. And that whole campaign was interesting.
It was great.
That
was your mistake, by the way.
It 100% was. I was not, because here's the thing, right? I started that campaign with a whole different, I knew where I wanted to take it. I knew I wanted to take it into the Hells, and their ultimate goal was going to be to fight somebody. But then this guy came in I think the 3rd or 4th session, and I basically said hey, are you interested? One of our players can't make it anymore. He's like, oh yeah, I'm in. What do you want? And I'm like, okay, well, here's the requirements. You can make a character based off of this. And he's like, all right, cool. Here's my character. I take one look at it and realize that he literally has no knowledge of anything prior to 5 minutes ago. And I'm thinking, this is perfect. Literally what was it? Astralborn, technically?
I think it's Starforged, I think is what they call it.
Starforged, but meaning you're an astral-born creature, something from the astral planes.
Yeah.
And that being the case, this Starforged, basically a space elemental robot, basically, kind of. And in doing so, I recognized he has no memory of anything that happened before. He just crash landed literally from the heavens. How can I not turn that into a major plot point?
I remember day one, my character just crash lands just into Faerun, and my first thought was, is that a dog? Everything, if it had a tail, the way my character was so fresh, so new, so dumb. So every single time that there was a character, if it had a tail, it must have been a dog. That's how my brain worked. If it looks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, but it has a tail, it's a dog.
If it looks like a duck, it must be Daffy Duck, which, speaking of, I actually found the character sheets. I'm going to send this to you in Discord so you can see this, because It is glorious. This is from TSR back in the 80s, 1981.
Yeah, I think 97 was whenever they stopped owning D&D, I think.
Gotcha. But my favorite here has to be Bugs Bunny. 15th level illusionist with 125 hit points, -4 armor class. What?
Wait, he has a constitution of 20. Why?
See, I feel
psionic
like
abilities. Okay, all right. I clearly know nothing about D&D. What is this? Oh my god, this is fantastic. This is fantastic.
This is like second edition.
Right here, right. Though many speculate upon the origins of this strange being, none know for certain. Some say that he is the last of the race of Lepus sapiens, and good riddance, while others believe him to be a native of the planet Cartuan, where there's no death and objects have but 2 dimensions. Only Bugs Bunny knows for sure, and he won't give anybody a straight answer. What? Why? Why is this a thing?
I love it. Like, it is the most absurd thing, and the fact that this is technically canon. Like, I could remake Bugs Bunny based on these stats in 5th edition and use him as an enemy, and probably my players would hate me.
Well, yeah, because you're trying to make us go against God at this point. Like, come on,
basically.
Bugs Bunny.
And yeah, on the second page, I got Popeye there. Apparently, Rocky and Bullwinkle and Dudley Do-Right were also options, not the Tasmanian Devil.
I love Rocky and Bullwinkle. I used to love that.
So yeah, it is so funny to me, honestly. Like, you know, I've seen some really interesting character builds over the last few years, and you know, I brought up in the last episode, or excuse me, I don't think it was the last episode, it was first episode. The fact that when Jonathan was playing with us, spoiler, he was the one that ended up playing as the thief grave warden and did not know how to use it properly. And I partly blame myself for that, for suggesting, hey, maybe you want a spellcaster in here because you're not really using your sneak ability. And then he learned how to use the sneak ability and forgot how to use his spellcasting ability for the rest of the game.
I remember there was like this second where we had to explain to him like how his cunning action works.
Yes.
And just how often he could actually like roll for stealth.
Yeah. And again,
that was a thing.
Like, I understand, you know, everybody's had their first time playing as a specific class, and especially if you're not, like, I feel like it used to be back in the day that before people would start playing D&D, they would read the user manual, you know, all the books and things that were pertinent to them, and then they'd go make a character, you know, handwritten sheet and everything. But nowadays, with all the tools that are, you know, available online, people don't even read it anymore. You know, we used Aurora for at least the beginning part of that campaign. So when he built his character, like it basically just built it for him, and he didn't know what any of the abilities did. So he's going into it completely blind, playing a class he's never played in a game he's not super familiar with. I felt bad about that, but at the same token, it did end up getting really funny at times where he would either remember he has an ability and do something insane, or forget he has an ability and basically die. I think how many times did he actually like kick the bucket? It was at least once. I know that, but I think it was like 2 or 3 times.
I can remember at least 2.
Yeah, I think
so. There's that.
I think it was at least 2. I remember. Man,
when he turned into a sword or a staff. Yeah, it was great.
He became a sentient great sword.
It was amazing.
It was
everywhere.
It was my way of basically, you know, I felt bad because I was like, listen, man, you got yourself into this situation. You fought an entity that you shouldn't have picked a fight with, and you died. I don't want you feeling bad, but at the same token, you know, learn that actions have consequences, which unfortunately he did not, you know, immediately charging back into battle after that, like nothing had even happened. Although I do say, I think he was a bit more cautious after that. He wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go kill this thing as a rogue.
Let me just go open this door without checking to see if it's trapped, you know?
Exactly. Although I do have to say some of the shenanigans you guys got up to, taming Avernus as the dragon was really funny.
I take no blame for that.
So here's the thing. I think you rolled a nat 20 for a charisma saving throw.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, it was a persuasion. You rolled a nat 20 on that, and he rolled a natural 1. And in doing that, I'm like, I have no choice. I have to make this really, really funny. And immediately, so for context, I basically had, in addition to Zariel, who was not on the plane of Avernus, or excuse me, I guess the circle? Technically, the hells are a plane, so semantics. Anyway, Zariel wasn't there, but I had to have some kind of a guardian of the plane. So I figured, you know what? Tiamat is also technically a thing. Depending on the lore, how you incorporate that can vary. And I was like, you know what? Red Dragon belongs in the Hells, and right in Avernus feels right. Let's have a dragon where the Hells were named after, right? Like this particular part of the Hells. So it was an ancient red dragon. It was a green dragon, ancient green dragon named Avernus, and that was really, really, really an interesting encounter. He ended up serving Asmodeus for the remainder of the campaign.
I kept him alive.
You kept him alive.
I made sure nothing harmed him. He was my baby.
Yeah, because he was an NPC. No one actually played as Avernus officially. And because of that, I was like, okay, we're starting, like everyone else is like level 5, and he started at level 12. He did not rank up at all. Like he didn't get any bonuses or boosts because he wasn't a player. He was an NPC. So it's like, okay, he's not part of the party. He's not getting milestone XP, and it doesn't make sense that he would, because he's an ancient dragon. Like, why would he get any higher than this?
He's already at his peak.
He's already at his peak, exactly. And looking at the stat for him, I think he would normally be like level 26 or something crazy like that. So I basically turned him into a dragonborn, or sort of like he was in like a dragonborn form, still a dragon, just a shapeshifter, or shapeshifted down into a dragon. I know a lot of fantasy does that. And nerfed him at a level 12, but with a caveat that if he died in battle, instead of like dying, like if he reached 0 hit points, he would then basically turn into the big dragon, level 26, and then at the end of the fight, he would basically just go away for several days to recover, up to a few weeks. So it was sort of that,
I
like,
didn't know that.
Yes.
I thought he would have just straight up died.
If he died as a dragon, because again, you guys were going up against some, like, we're talking, realm level danger threats. There were definitely some moments that, like, if you guys, I think you fought 2 Tarasques in one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to give you an idea, like they're fighting some really high level stuff. If he somehow died, that would basically be it. Like, he's gone, done. But I didn't want to like murder a level 12 character fighting a level 30 and then say, okay, well, that's it. That's all you get. This ancient dragon is actually only a 12th level player. That would really suck.
Yeah.
So, I guess we can go back to games briefly before we go on to our last topic. So one thing I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially, we addressed it a little bit in the last one, but honestly, I think there's definitely still room for this, and that is game sequels. I know that a lot of games have really ridden off the coattails of sequels left and right of, we've got, I'm looking at one right now, literally in my library, Jurassic World Evolution. They did Jurassic World Evolution 2. Didn't make a new game, didn't improve the original game. They basically gave up on it and made another one. Like, we see a lot of those, but at the same token, some of these games genuinely deserve to have a sequel, I think. And I think there are a lot of games out there that don't have a sequel that should. I'm going to open with this one, officially Half-Life 3. I know we got Half-Life Alyx, that is not Half-Life 3.
All right, if we're going based off of like the obvious ones, Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2, I deserve a Titanfall 3. I don't like the way it ended. We need more. Apex just doesn't cut it. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. I want my Titanfall 3.
Well, now we know what kind of gamer you are.
Listen. I'll play. I play like every genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, if there's two games, all right, two games that deserve a sequel, like two specific games, it's Titanfall 2 and Okami.
Interesting choice.
Like, there's a lot of games that either deserved a sequel that actually eventually got a sequel. Like Psychonauts would have been at the top of my list because I'm a huge Psychonauts fan, but Psychonauts got a VR game as a technical sequel called The Rhombus of Ruin, which I played. That was great. And then they also had Psychonauts 2 come out recently, which fantastic, by the way, amazing. It was a Kickstarter campaign, crowdfunded. It was a fantastic game. It's great. So there's that. And then, you know, obviously I have more, but if we're talking about like ones that everyone can get behind, everyone's like been wanting for a while, Titanfall 2, very obvious. Everyone is like has been wanting a Titanfall sequel for quite a long time. And then Okami, which is a little bit of an underrated game in my opinion, but if you're a PlayStation fanboy, you all know who you are. We all know, you know, Okami is the one, right? But yeah, Okami definitely deserves a sequel. You know what Okami is?
I haven't personally heard of that one before. No.
So Okami was like a PlayStation Legend of Zelda clone kind of deal.
Okay.
It definitely has its own. It has its own art style, which I find visually fascinating. Like visually, the game is incredible. The music, incredible. So essentially, it's got the same core gameplay elements. But you're actually taking the role of Amaterasu in her like wolf form, which is kind of neat. But you have to essentially think of like feudal Japan, and you have to go around like exorcising demons and stuff like that. And it's less about you and more about some of the side characters and side stories in a bunch of different. There's a bunch of different things going on. But it's very, very Legend of Zelda-esque. But it's the combat is great. The way that you unlock new abilities and powers and stuff like that is fantastic. The story, fantastic. The setting, fantastic. Everything about it is just amazing. And we never got a sequel.
Yeah.
I definitely think it deserves one.
Yeah, you know, personally, I know that there is a lot of games that, you know, honestly do need a sequel. As far as games that come to my head, the only one that I can think of at this very moment, I'm probably just brain dead as I speak. Cyberpunk is definitely one. I've heard they're working on Cyberpunk 2. I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm really excited to see what that turns into. By the way, you brought up Kickstarter, and while I have you on that topic, I'm going to go ahead and drop a sponsor. For anybody listening, the last day to get the Kickstarter is today. It is right now, November 30th. It's going to be running through 9 a.m. Eastern, December 1st. If you have the opportunity to go in and sponsor, or excuse me, to go get a copy and support this game, we would be extremely grateful because this has been a long time in the works. We're really hoping to reach our funding goal. If we do, or if we surpass our funding goal, we've got a lot of really cool milestones to reach, and we're already talking about making a sequel to this game. Mainly because the whole point of this game is the fact that it can be mixed with other sequels. If you haven't looked at this on the Kickstarter at all, check it out. The link is in the description. You'll be able to go there and watch the video that describes it a little bit. You've got the full layout as to how the game works down in the description of that Kickstarter. And honestly, I'm just really excited to see where this game's going to go. So thank you so much for considering that. Sponsorship over. Let's get back to this. And in the same breath, games that need a sequel but don't have one, let's talk about games that did not need a sequel, or the sequel that they received was way worse than it should have been, that you're angry about. Because I can think of some right off the top of my head, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, all right. Hear me out now.
Mm-hmm.
Any Call of Duty game after Black Ops 2.
I agree. The original like, Black Ops 2, right? The original one?
Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%.
So there's that. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy Call of Duty as like a brainless like FPS game.
Wow, he's calling everybody who plays Call of Duty stupid. You see? I bring on the guest and he insults you. I'm sorry, everybody.
Hey. Yes, but the problem that I have with Call of Duty, right, is like there's so much effort put into something that just doesn't hit the way that it used to, right? Like Battlefield,
sure.
Same thing. Like it doesn't hit the way that it used to, and call it nostalgia goggles or whatever. But the biggest problem is, especially with the newer generation, right? Why are we still spending like $70 for a digital download that takes up like 140 plus gigabytes on my hard drive, right? But has maybe a 3.5 hour campaign.
Yeah, 100%.
Make it make sense. You know what I mean? And then even then, the multiplayer, like, don't get me wrong, it is the nature of a multiplayer game to be repetitive, right? But when I think like acceptable repetitiveness, right, is when it's just the one game that feels the same. But why is it that it's been like the same maps, the same setting, the same guns, every single Call of Duty release?
Yep.
Every single time, and they all use the same like terrible like menu layout and UI and all this other stuff. It doesn't feel fluid enough, it makes no sense to me as like a long time like video game fan to spend like $60-$70 every year on the same garbage. It's just recycled nonsense. You know what I mean?
And
especially
to add on to that, sorry to cut you off. Basically, not only, and this is just my understanding of how it works, but not only are you spending this money every year for something that is slightly different, but then they end up pulling the plug on the old game, so you can't even go and play that one anymore.
Yep.
Like that it baffles me. I'm part of the generation, like my first Call of Duty game was Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, the original. And you know what? That game was incredible. I remember going in, I probably put in 700 or 800 hours in that, easy. And that was on the PS3. So, I probably cooked my PS3 pretty good with that one. But, nowadays it's like they just don't hit the same. I don't understand the whole, like the only thing I can understand as far as what's keeping people in there is the whole loot boxes system. The idea of getting things to then trade them and all the microtransactions. I understand why that's appealing. I personally don't like it. I think it very much feels like you're targeting groups of people specifically just to take their money. It has nothing to do with actually providing any kind of like bonus or a sense of satisfaction or any content really to the game, other than just saying, hey, you want something that's slightly modified by a few pixels? Here you go. That'll be $24.99.
Like, okay, so I can definitely get behind you. Now hear me out. In defense of COD, they've moved away from, at least from what I can tell, they moved at least well enough away from the whole microtransaction thing. Obviously, you still have things like Warzone and stuff like that that are very microtransaction based, but
right.
Warzone's also free to play, to be fair.
That is true. That is true.
You know what I mean? I get the freemium model. I'd rather play a game and just buy the game, and then not like going with the whole Baldur's Gate thing where you buy the game.
Yes.
And the game is done. You know what I mean? That fantastic, right? And I can get behind the freemium model if you're not attaching a $70 game to the freemium model as essentially DLC for Warzone. Most people that I know will buy Call of Duty and just dry it out 3.5 hours later and only use it because it came with guns that you can use in Warzone.
Yep.
I don't really know anyone that's actually going out of their way to do this. Granted, I am also really, really bad at this. I do drop like $100 here and there on Valorant. So,
Oh, gross.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, so, listen, the model works, okay? The freemium model works. But also, to be fair, Valorant is also, actually has a competitive scene. Same thing with like League of Legends, for example. It's not going away.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
Do you know any like professional like Call of Duty players or teams? Because I don't.
So funny enough, the guy that, you know, I talked with the first, and it's funny, you still haven't met him all this time. He was in our first episode. Tate used to be a pro Call of Duty player. They were part of a group of like, they would do tournaments and things, and he used to actually make money off of it, and it was a decent bit, but you had to win. And I remember him talking about like how much time he would have to put into that just for practice and training and qualification and tournaments. And the dude was nasty. Like he was really good. To put it into perspective, he was the guy that was like, I will 360 no scope you with an intervention halfway across the map on Rust in Modern Warfare 2.
Oh, same. I feel that.
Like he was that kind of guy. So amazing with a controller, and you know that translated into just his love for Call of Duty. He still plays it. He still asks like, "Oh, you got to get Warzone." And I'm like, I'm good. I really don't need to play that.
Yeah, like I'll still play like Warzone if someone asks me to, you know. But like for me, my big thing was doing the whole like MLG thing for like Halo 3. I used to be like really, really good. I actually used to play in smaller tournaments and stuff like that when I was a kid, for like Halo 2, Halo 3, Reach, stuff like that. My main game mode was SWAT, which is essentially just you have like either a DMR or a battle rifle, so like something just semi-automatic to some extent, and it's headshots only.
Wow.
It's like, yeah, it's literally like you get because it's so unlike Call of Duty, Halo is very, very timing based in terms of like being able to actually time your shots, because you can't just, the guns don't fire as fast as you can pull the trigger, right? There's like a rhythm to them,
Right.
So like you have to actually time your shots, and this isn't a dig at Call of Duty. I'm just saying it's a different game, right?
Right.
And like with SWAT, it's headshots only. It's I think like a 4v4 to 5v5 depending on the game. But yeah, no, it was incredible. That's when I had that. I wouldn't say that was my peak, but that was like one of the best times of my life in terms of being able to play, especially like on a console, because like I would get out of these games with like $250, $500 a year, stuff like that. It was fantastic. But then I got a computer, and when I first started gaming on PC, my eyes were just opened, right? Like the amount of money that you can just make by just like playing like Valorant or playing League of Legends is insane, right? Or like playing CS, right? Like Call of Duty has comparatively, I would say, like no esports scene whatsoever.
Oh, I'd agree
Right.
with you. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's more so that it's a lot smaller. And it's been a minute since he used to do that. I want to say it's probably been 5 or 6 years since he actually played it competitively for money. So, you know, things may have been a bit different back then. I don't know what the scene looks like today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the scene was way, way bigger back then, right? But that's kind of what I'm saying is that Call of Duty, in my opinion at least, has failed to evolve with the newer generations of gamers. You know what I mean? More people are watching Fortnite than they are Call of Duty, right?
Definitely.
And it's like, if you think about it, it's like Call of Duty and Battlefield were like the titans of their industry, right? Like Halo had a niche community because Halo was exclusive to Xbox, right? Whereas Call of Duty and Battlefield were on like every platform. I even had multiple copies of Call of Duty 4 and Black Ops, because I even had Black Ops 1 and I had Black Ops 1 and I had Modern Warfare for both the 360 and the Wii. It was kind of fun on the Wii. I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of fun. Dumb graphically, not that great, but fun. But when it comes to like the esports scene and stuff like that, it just hasn't evolved, and which sucks to kind of even think about the world the way that I am here. But the only way that you can really measure continuous success, especially when you're releasing the same game over and over and over again, right, is you have to measure by the concurrent players and how successful you are in marketing, right? The reason why with like League of Legends and Valorant, where there's like a TV show, League of Legends has a card game, dude. Like, it is insane how big League of Legends has popped off over the years, right?
100%.
Like, I know people who know League of Legends not as a video game, right? I know people who thought of it as a just as a band, right? Like League of Legends was a band, because they make so many really, really, really good musical productions that like they'll come out with another album and they just see League of Legends on it and they're like, okay, I guess that's just I guess that's just like a band or something. Like, no, that's just a soundtrack that they came out with for their like new skin line that came out. They're coming out with entire music videos and albums to promote skins. That is insane, right? Like League of Legends is consistently, in terms of like the Worlds events, they are outperforming things like the Super Bowl, right? In terms of like of actual like viewer of attention. It's insane, right? So like I just, as an event and cultural impact, Call of Duty just isn't there, you know, especially because Call of Duty is almost like exclusively a Western thing. Right.
Definitely.
A lot of people forget that games in the East versus games in the West, two completely different things, you know?
For
so like,
sure.
I don't know any, like, for example, any teams from say like Asia, for example, that are going out of their way to play COD.
Definitely.
Or like Battlefield.
And you know, it's interesting. I'm going to share the screen on Discord so you're able to see this, just kind of bringing it back, classic style. This is a classic video. Yeah, I'll just play it. It'll speak for itself.
Remember this ad, right? Oh man.
Hey, buddy.
Surprise.
Surprise,
I'm gonna get copywritten on the sure, but I'm surprised, Batman.
Guess you brought a jet to a gunfight.
I'm a busy.
Incoming.
When you talk about advertising, this is what companies need to do. And come on, this is Black Ops 2. And this is the last.
Surprise, what's lady?
Oh my god, that feels blessed. Bring it
Not good.
And then
Zombies.
casually drops in the zombies.
Groovy.
You want to talk about a
Pre-ordered
perfect
the new
game?
count.
Like, I mean, maybe it wasn't perfect, but it was definitely something like that. I think you hit the nail on the head with a game that does not need any more of a sequel. Call of Duty. That's it. They should have ended it. They could have changed it where it's not Call of Duty anymore. Maybe they did a total reboot that, you know, the system is overhauled, but I think Activision just looks at this and says, you know what, this is a money cow. We can keep pushing stuff out. Exactly. It's just, you keep pushing the same thing over and over and over again. You barely tweak the already existing and already severely outdated engine because it was close to perfect and they felt like they didn't need to do much else. So now they release the same game every year with a new update. Now we're up to like, what is it, Black Ops 5 or something?
Let's see. We had so they just released 6.
Okay, so there you go. To put it in perspective, Black Ops 6. And that's not even a sequel to this game. That is a sequel to the reboot of this game. Like, they didn't need to do that. There's so many that just...
Well, it wasn't a reboot. So they have Black Ops 1, 2, and 3. But like the only ones that really mattered, like we don't talk about Black Ops 4. Then Black Ops quote unquote 5 is actually Black Ops Cold War. Black Ops Cold War is actually a sequel to the first game. So like Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2 there's a time skip in between the two, right?
I'm not gonna argue for its need to exist though, because like, let's be honest, it didn't need to.
Okay, the campaign, it didn't need to, you're correct, but the campaign for Cold War wasn't that bad. It was actually kind of fun. There's even multiple endings, so there's that was kind of neat.
Yeah, I hear you. So I gotta say, for my number one pick as far as like games that don't need a sequel, mostly because I feel like I don't know how they could handle it any better, would have to be Baldur's Gate 3. And I know that you weren't the biggest fan of that game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think they're very well in touch with their community.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I loved Baldur's Gate. It's just I just had a lot going on. It was hard for me to like play it all in one playthrough. It just felt like a lot.
I get it. And honestly, though, it's one of those games that I'm so happy was handled correctly, because a lot of developers drop the ball these days. Like, I don't know what it is, but the majority of sequels that come out are overwhelmingly hated. And I don't know if it's because they're too expensive, or because they're too buggy, or because the developers are trying to force, specific messaging to certain groups, or maybe because they're just so out of touch with their community that they're pushing stuff that nobody wants. I really don't know, but like, you just look around, like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, like we were talking about, City Skylines, when that came out, the City Skylines 2, everybody got upset about. Kerbal Space Program 2 was a complete flop. They stopped developing it because they basically just said this is too hard and gave up. I can't say that there's just one reason that these things are happening, but it's still happening, and it's very sad to see. So for a game like Baldur's Gate 3 to come out in this generation, I think they were very wise. Who was the studio that made Larian? I think Larian was extremely wise to say, you know what? We're not going to make any more Baldur's Gate. We're done with Baldur's Gate. We're moving on to other projects. Don't ask for more. You're not going to get it. I think that was wise, because they're saying, you know what? We made the game the best we could. This is as good as it can possibly get with what we have the capacity to do, and we don't want to let you down. I would rather a developer say that than to say, oh yeah, we're going to release, 12 more sequels to this game, and they're going to suck more and more every year until eventually you stop playing it and we end up filing for bankruptcy. I don't want to see that happen. I don't think anyone wants to see that happen.
Yeah, the thing is, Larian actually has a really good track record with this exact thing. Because, like, I remember when Divinity Original Sin came out, and, like, everyone loved it. Like, Divinity in general is a long-standing franchise. And they've, obviously some games have been, like, hit or miss. But, like, they have a lot of really cool things that they've gone and done. Like, I remember Divinity 2, I think, has a system where you can actually just put in I think this wasn't a mod. I think it was in part of the core game where you can literally just create a campaign, like from scratch, and then you and your friends can play through the campaign.
That's crazy. I haven't had the opportunity to play that game, but now you're making me want to go get it.
Yeah, if you like Baldur's Gate, just play the Divinity games. Like Original Sin 2, I believe is I'm pretty sure it is the core of Divinity Original Sin 2 is what created Baldur's Gate 3. Like, they play very, very similarly. Like, right down to, like, the way that the movement system works and all those stuff. They're very, very similar games.
Very good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So I'll tell you what, unfortunately, we don't have enough time to get to the last one, because the last topic on here, mainly because I think it warrants its own long conversation. So I think that'd be good to make it to another episode. The next segment we're going to do is DMing woes, talking about D&D and all that goodness and things that we've experienced as DMs. As I said before, Alex is the eternal DM, but so am I. So that'd be kind of interesting to talk about.
I don't want to do it anymore, please.
So I think that'll be good to talk about in another episode, because we are already over the hour mark. But do you have anything else to say to our lovely fans?
I mean, thanks for watching, I guess. Yeah, I'll be here, I guess.
Oh man, that's awesome, man. And you know what? Thank you so much for coming on. For everybody who has watched or listened, make sure you click the like button, you subscribe, and ring that bell so that you get notifications when new episodes come out. I'm trying to make these every week, and I think I'm doing okay so far. So you let me know what you think, and give me some feedback as to what you guys want to see. But with that, again, thank you so much, Alex, for joining us. It was great to have you on here, and I'm looking forward to having you on here again. You were awesome.
Yeah, anytime.
And to everybody out there, thanks for watching and listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.